All right, what I'm going to do is just go over my code, all right, to try to show you what was wrong. Now, I mean, a couple of you have come up and told me, well, I changed it, I made it look like yours, etc., and now it's screwed up. This would have been something probably better to tell you beforehand, but if you're going to ever make major changes to a project, you really should copy the project and make a copy for it. I'm not blaming anybody but me for that, for not saying that earlier, but you should do that. All right? Now, taking it from the top, I put a bunch of comments in here, but the first thing to notice, if you take a look, if you look up here, you notice we got a bunch of stuff in gray. And technically, that means we don't need that. So I can remove these. We are using that one, and I can remove all of these. As far as I can tell, those are the only ones we actually need in here. Are the using system, the using system.data.sql client, which is everything database, and the using system.windows.forms. It doesn't hurt to have the other stuff there, but again, it's superfluous. In other words, it's extraneous. It's not needed. All right? Okay, so we had the namespace in here, and just taking it from the top, there are different ways that you can get information about this database, such as, if you look up on the screen here, if I right mouse click on the name of the database and I go to properties, notice that amongst other things, what I can get here is the full path to the database. So for me, it's C:\users, \rankin, \desktop, \mydemodb v1, \mydemodb, \demodb.mdf. All right? That is just the path. So why am I even mentioning that to you? Because if you look over here a little bit later on down where it says attach DB file name, this right here is that path. All right? That is the path. Now, what I also mentioned up above is that there's another way that you can get to that. It says right mouse click on the database name in the Server Explorer. Well, I don't have the Server Explorer up, so I right mouse click on the database name here and choose open. All right? And there's the toolbox. There's the Server Explorer. All right, so as it says, right mouse click on that and choose properties from there. So right mouse click and choose properties. All right, and it's got much of the same information there. When you look at it, there's the name, including the path. But the key thing for this, if I move this way down here, I'm going to move this and move this way the hay over, is right here, there's the connection string. So you can take all of that, copy it to the clipboard, all right, and after you copy it to the clipboard, what you can do then is take that whole thing and paste it as I did right here where it says connection string. What this does is it tells the system what database we are attempting to connect to. All right? All right. Then notice it says here, this will be the actual connection. We will set our connection equal to this. So in other words, if you look up on the screen, con, for lack of better words, con is a shortcut for all that. All right? It's much easier to just say con. All right. This, as it says, will hold the actual command and the connection string. So it'll tell us the command we want to run and what we want to run it on. All right. The next thing that's here, I want you to see this. If you look up on the very top of the screen, it says data reader. If you use a data reader is read only. This particular example that we're working with right now, this example, all right, All it's doing is select on each table, and it's showing the results in a message box. Does that make sense to everyone? I'm going to show you in just a couple minutes the project. We're going to expand upon this and what we're going to be working on next. All right, I'll show you that in just a couple minutes. All right, the way that you actually write this stuff, the way that you actually write it is you take your select statements, your insert statements, your update statements, your delete statements, you put them into a string. And then you run a command on that string. You say, well, that seems like a dumb way to do it. Guess what? Starting sometime next week, we're going to work on another part of this project where we're going to create our own, remember these from back in chapter 9 in your book? We're going to create our own database class. And then you'll see how much easier it is because we'll use that class on our tables, and it'll make our life easier. All right. This output string is where we actually throw the stuff that we use for the message box. All right. Then this right here, as it says, this is the code that runs when we click the customers button. So what are we doing here? Well, this again, this is that output string. So what I want you to understand, where it says output right there, that is making sure when I run this and I click customers like this and you see the results and I say OK and then I click orders, if you didn't have that there, it would keep grabbing all the stuff that was in there and adding to it. So in other words, I would have both the customer stuff there and the order stuff. It's not what we want. All right, so that's why that is there. All right, so what are we doing? Well, as I mentioned to you at the beginning of today, and I wish I'd have thought of this beforehand, whenever you work on database stuff, it should be within a try-catch block. Why? Because databases can be unbelievably problematic. You put a wrong field name in. You put a wrong field type in. You know, there's all sorts of things that you can do. Put a wrong connection string. You spell something wrong on your connection string, etc. There are a lot of things that can happen. So everything that we're attempting to do in here is inside of that try block. We'll go over all of it in just a minute, but that's all of it. If it fails, all we're doing is just printing out what the error message is. Is there more that we could do? Of course there is more that we could do. But all we're actually doing right there is printing out the error message. That's it. All right, so let's back up here. So what are we doing? We're saying, okay, set this local or this variable called con equal to that connection string, that big long thing I showed you earlier. All right? Then open the connection. The way that databases are supposed to work, you open it up, you do your thing, and you close it. Everybody hear that? Now, with these databases that we're working with, each one of you has your own copy. That's not how it is in the real world. If you're working for a company, there is a very good chance at that company they have one database you're all sharing. So you don't want to have it where you have it open and no one else can get to it. That doesn't make any sense. All right? So I'm trying to show it to you that way. So we're opening the connection. Then here, am I right in assuming everybody understands what that query is doing? Literally, it's just saying grab those 4 fields from the customers table. But because of the way that this works, all right, because of the way this works, we have to go and throw it into a string. That string is called SQL. We can call it anything we want it. Then we're going to say, hey, we want to create a new SQL command. It'll be this thing that's in that string, and we're going to be running it on our connection string. Does that make sense? And if you say, well, I mean, why do you have to do all that work? Because that's the way they've set it up. I mean, I can't sit there and say to you, why did they do this? Why did they? I don't know. but it's the way that it's done. All right? Then we're telling it right here to actually execute the command. All right? And there is a chance that when you do this, in fact, you would think you're going to get multiple records back. Did you hear what I said? Okay, and that's why it's an execute reader. Reader brings you back a bunch of stuff in a read-only format. All right? And again, you may or may not care, but a reader is also known as a fire hose. Because basically it's like when you turn the hose on, how the water comes just streaming out. That's basically the way that the data reader works. All right. Then we're telling it right here, as it says in the comment, to loop through the database and add the fields from each record. So what is get value 0? Get value 0 is the customer ID. What is get value 1? Get value 1 is the company name. What is get value 2? Get value 2 is the contact name. And what is get value 3? Get value 3 is the phone number. So in other words, what we're saying is we want you to loop through every record that you have and add it to this output string. All right? That's what we end up printing out at the end inside of the message box. My question for you is, at least as far as what's happening, does that make sense? All right. And then we do the message box, customer records, and boom, there they are. When you're done, you are always supposed to close the database connection. Then we go back and we do virtually the same thing. The only difference really between these two things is here we're grabbing the information from the customers table, and in here we're grabbing the information from the orders table. Other than that, it is virtually the same routine. We're just running it against different tables. Does that make sense? I mean, if you really knew what you were doing, or I knew what I was doing more than I do, could we go back and actually write this as one routine that we called from each one of the click events? Probably. All right. I don't know if that would be a good idea to do that or not. The advantage is it would be less code. The disadvantage is it may be less clear to the person who's looking at the code as far as what you're doing. All right. So again, just so you see this, because it's going to look a little different than yours. If I come back here and I run it again, I've already gone through and started working on the second part of this, which I'll show you in just a bit. But if you look on the customers, you'll notice you don't have that customer. In fact, I've been screwing around with this. So I've been adding customers. So I had already added customer 7, then remove them. 8, 9, 10, and 11, then remove them. Now I've got 12 here. All right? And I was dinking around with that too. Another thing I want you to understand, these are the customers, forgetting about the Panera Bread, these are the customers you have right now. You have them. All right? And the way this is set up, I'm not even sure what would happen if you were to come in and try to remove customer 01 or 1001, because customer 1001 has a bunch of orders here. Technically, if you try to remove that customer, you should get an error message, because the customer, for lack of a better word, is the parent and the orders are the children. Does that make sense? Because a customer has orders. So if you try to remove the parent and there are still children around, you should get an error message. All right? So again, I'm asking the question, is what's happening here, does that make sense? All right. What we're going to do next, all right, and I've got to find it because unfortunately I've got a bunch of copies of this that I threw all over the place. So I want to make sure I'm showing you the right thing, so we'll find out in a second. That's not it. This is not good. I gotta find. There's a part 2 to this, and I've got it. I just have to find out where I put it. That's not it either. I'm hoping this is it. We're going to change our main form so it looks like this. What we want to be able to do is either insert, update, or delete a customer, insert, update, or delete an order. So if you look at this, notice there are a bunch of forms over here which you may or may not have seen. But show customers still works the same way. It's the same stuff you already see. All right? Except, well, okay, we'll fix that. But if I come in here to insert a customer, that's what I want to be able to do. All right? And notice, too, I can jump back and forth between forms. I'm going to show you how to do all that stuff starting tomorrow. All right? If I want to update a customer, notice what we do. I'm going to show you how to do this. We get a drop down. Okay? Now I should have probably put the names in there, but I've got their numbers. So if I put in 6, you can see how it fills that up. All right? So if I don't want Larry Ellison in there, I want that to be Lawrence Ellison. Let's say that's it. I tell it to update it. You sure you want to? Yes. All right? And it should have updated. I'm going to go back to the main form, show my customers, and you'll notice it's now Lawrence Ellison. So we were able to go in there and do an update. So the idea is you'll be able to, and I made them, I just color coded them, just things I came up with. But you'll be able to jump back and forth. So if I want to delete a customer, again, if I come in there, there's that Panera Bread company that I showed you. You can see how it's filled up. Okay? I don't want to be able to touch any of this stuff. I want to be able to delete this record. So I'm going to come in here and say I want to delete it, and it says, are you sure you want to delete that customer? Note, you will probably not be able to delete the customer if they have any outstanding orders. But I say yes. All right, record deleted. Now it's gone. You say, well, how do you prove that? You go back to this form, you show your customers, and notice who's not there anymore. Panera Bread. All right, so that's the idea. So if I do come back in here now and insert a customer, all right, company name, some really big company. Contact name, I'll just put me in there. All right, tell it to insert it. It says it was inserted. I go back to the main form, I show my customers, all right, and there I am. So the idea is what we're doing here is we're actually making this a program somebody might want to use because they'd be able to go in and bring in their tables, add records to their tables, modify existing records from their tables, delete existing records from their tables. Does that make sense? That's what we're going to go through in the second part. All right. Then there'll be a part 3, and what we're going to do in there is rather than have to write all this code, we're going to cut it way down by writing our own database class. I'm going to give you all the code. All right. But it should make our lives a lot easier. All right. So what I'm going to do, and I did it because I wanted to make it, color in color. So maybe you noticed this, maybe you didn't, maybe you care with what I'm about to tell you, maybe you don't. But notice if I come in here and I run this and I click Insert Customer and go back, Update Customer and go back, Delete Customer and go back, Insert Order and go back, Update Order and go back, Delete Order and go back. What you may or may not be able to tell, I made each one of those forms the same size and laid them out in the same type of way. Why? Because familiarity can be a good thing in here. All right? And I thought I did that, but I guess I didn't. It is even possible, if you look in here, you can go and either remove or disable these buttons. You can do that. Because there's a button, there's a property that's in here that's called something like maximize or form maximize. If you set it to false, you won't be able to maximize. If I don't want to be able to minimize, etc. So there's ways that you can turn things on and turn things off. And the last thing I will tell you about this, look on the screen if you would, please. Right now, if I insert a customer, all right, would you agree with this? If I come through here and put in a new customer, that I can put in, company name, a company. Contact name, I can put in my name. Would you agree, though, that right now, for the phone number, I could put hello? Because the answer is yes. Because that's set up as an N varchar 24. All right? Something like that. But it's set up basically as a string. What we really should be doing, and we'll do this next week, all right, is we should be checking to make sure that if we're trying to put in data, the data is of the right type. Where this really becomes important is, what if I want to insert an order? Notice what I have to put in there. Either I should make this a drop-down list that shows me all of the customer IDs, or I should make a check on here to make sure that indeed I put an integer in there. Does that make sense? These are all things you have to start thinking about, all right, if you're going to become a programmer. Just stuff like that. Even this, order date. Do I want to write some kind of check to make sure that the date I'm putting in makes sense? All right. If I want to insert an order in here, I'm going to go in there 1001. Order date. I'm going to put in 3036. All right. And I'll just put in 0101. In the quantity, I'll put in there -1234. And I click save. It says the record was inserted. So I go back to my main form. I look at orders. And what you'll notice is it's in there. January 1st, the year 3036. Should we start making some checks in there to make sure that what you put in there for the year is the current year, let's say, or next year, or whatever? Because right now we're not doing any of that. The idea in here, the idea was to show you some database fundamentals. Once we start putting in all that stuff, instead of these programs being 100 lines, they're now going to be 300 lines. Because much of the code that you're going to end up putting in is going to be error checking code. All right? And you find out the more you program, the more error checking code you end up putting in. All right, so I'm going to run this off. I'll show it to you. is. Oh, great. That's fine. So this will be the next part. You'll be given instructions on how to do all this. You will change your main page so it looks like this. All right. In other words, you'll have 8 buttons on it instead of the 2. Then you'll come in and you'll add 6 additional forms. We haven't done that where we've worked with multiple forms. All right. You will do that. When you get done, you literally will have all the forms as are shown right here. All right. Form delete order, form delete customer, form insert order, form insert customer, form update order, form update customer. You could call them anything you wanted, but it makes sense to have them have the name as far as what they're going to be doing. Then you're going to come in here. This is how you basically go from form to form. You tell it to hide the current form. You tell it to create a new instance of whatever form you want, and then you tell it to show that one. All right? So you're going to do that. And what I tell you is, this is what I ended up using. I made the insert forms a dark green, the update forms an amber, and the delete a red. Kind of like for stop signs, or stoplights rather. You know, green is go, insert. Yellow is you really should be slowing down. That's the update. And red for stop type of thing. So this is, again, the button click thing that you'll put in. What I told you was these are the dimensions that I use to build my forms. You don't have to use those. You can make them look any way you want as long as they work. So if you do that, this is the main form. This is the insert customer form, the insert order form, the update customer form, the update order form, the delete customer form, and the delete order form. And I realize this might be kind of hard for you to see, but I want you to see it anyway. And that is, if you look right here, like I said, it doesn't show very well, but you'll see it when you get your copies. This field right here, this one, this is a drop-down list or a combo box. This field right here, this field is read-only. Why? Because the only thing I want you to be able to change for a customer is the company name or the contact name or the phone number. I don't want you to be able to change their ID because that could royally screw up everything you're doing. And with this drop-down list, when you pick one, it'll automatically populate this for you. All right? And the same kind of thing then for the order. That's a combo box. That is the order ID. You can't change the order or the customer ID in here. You can only change these. All right? And then finally for a delete, it may not look like it. These are all read-only are all read-only fields. If I want to delete something, I'm not going to give you the ability to change it. All right? So that's the way that that one is set up, and that's also the way that this one is set up. All right? As it says, you will already have had the code for the back to main form. All right? Last thing I'll tell you is you might think to yourself, okay, I get this. All right? I'll tell you what, I was thinking about this last night. If I'm a student in this class, I'm going to say, I get what you're doing. I sort of do. You're giving us the code, cool. It seems like a hell of a lot in the last 3 or 4 weeks of a class. Well, I will tell you, I've said this to you before. The class you take next semester is by far the hardest class in the program. I don't think that's even close. All right? So we've been changing the class around to try to make it easier for people to understand and get through it, such as the written tests you get, you'll be handed out in class. You'll get a week to do them. Those of you who cringe when you have to do written tests, you shouldn't, because you've got a week to do them and your book. My hope is if you get 15 or whatever of those, then everybody gets 100% on every one. All right? But the stuff we do next semester will be very database intensive. All right, they actually have you build an application in here that's called, I think it's called like Sports Score or something like that, and it's an actual online little store. We're going to build that, even though you'll have all the code. We're going to still build it as a class. Then you're going to get some time also to build one of your own. All right? And when we get it done, we're going to attempt to not only put it on our machine, but we're going to attempt to use probably Microsoft Azure and put it actually, house the sucker, actually out on the internet. So anybody's going to be able to look at what, if you give them the URL, will be able to go out there and look at your stuff. All right? That's what the class next semester is all about. But again, it's not an easy class. So the idea was to give you at least an introduction to some of the stuff you can do with a database this semester. Granted, you get all summer to forget it, right? All right. But ideally, when we come back in fall, you'll be like, oh yeah, I kind of remember when we did this. I kind of remember when we did this. All right. So I'm going to run off a dozen copies of this right now and give everybody a copy. Now, if you say to me, all right, okay, what I don't get is I made your changes and nothing works or whatever, all right, I'll be more than happy to try to take a look at it. The problem is it's really hard. It's not like you can just sit there and grab your folder and send it to me and I can look at it and I can fix it. Database stuff is unbelievably hinky. It's so easy to have something not work, at least what I found. And it can be something real simple and real innocent that screws up everything. I'm going to send it to the printer in the office because, to my knowledge, that's the only one that we have here that is a color printer. So I'm going to go in there and grab that, and I'll be back in here in just a few minutes.